Right. There's a saying that goes that we are the sum of the 5 people closest to us. And the reasoning behind this is that we, as people, it's been ingrained into us to perform with others. It has been passed down to us for hundreds, thousands of years. Back when we were hunter-gatherers, back during those times, was a subsistence living where we were heavily, and as we are heavily reliant on other people for sheer survival, it only makes sense to want to get in good with these individuals so that they can help us live until the next day by day. It's a form of peer pressure. Just as we say, hi, how are you to people, even during times when we don't really believe it, or we don't really mean it, or we don't care how the other person is doing. This conformity is also there to help smooth out interactions, remove some of the friction. In modern times, we are not so reliant on other people for survival. Still, we do it because it makes a social circle. It takes out the tension within that group, so that if there is a general solidarity within that social group, there is a general way of how everyone in that group does things, and generally a way how people think. And I experienced this firsthand. First-hand example would be when I was an English teacher. I remember specifically it was in my 8th grade class. The class in general was fairly well behaved. I remember one boy in particular that was a bit different from the rest, let's say. I won't get too deep into it, just say that there was a lot of behavioral problems within this individual student. And I tried these different techniques, from pulling this boy aside after class, asking if there was something wrong with my class or something I could help him with, to reprimanding in class to stop whatever it is that he was doing, what he was doing that was inappropriate for in a classroom setting. That didn't really work though, and honestly, this was towards the end of the school year. I only had a little over a month left, and at this point I was just looking towards the finish line of finishing this school year. I never intended to be an English teacher or a teacher long term. I was just exploring a career path. And I was tired, and rightly or wrongly, I decided to take an alternative path. I didn't want to deal with this boy anymore. So what I did, I remember one day in class, I had all planned out, all mapped out in my head, walked into class with a very stern face, and I asked this boy with behavioral problems to present himself come forward in class. And I proceeded I just opened the classroom door, told him to leave. And I slammed the door so that he can't come back in. These other students, they've never seen this type of behavior from me before, so they were taken aback. And they were silent. For a moment, I slammed that door in that boy's face, told him to leave my classroom. Basically, it was a permanent excommunication from a class. The other students didn't know what to make of it. And immediately after, I turned my very stern face to a very lighthearted mood. I do nicknames immediately after, just as a joke. And for those that don't know, Thais, they have very long names. It's really, really long. And if you have a lot of students, I have 90, it becomes very difficult to remember all their names. So they all have nicknames that they actually use amongst themselves. This makes it easier. So I decided to give them new nicknames with a heavy American South influence. Nicknames such as Sweetheart, Sweet Pea, Sweet Cheeks, Baby Pigs, Baby Pie, etc. Just as a joke, and I made it through my demeanor to convey it that it was just for fun, as it was the end of the school year, just to lighten things up a little bit. And I think the students, as a majority, they took it quite well. They enjoyed the amusement of having a new nickname. And from that point forward, from that class onward to the end of the school year, that class, where I threw out that one boy who absolutely repulsed, so that he could not be a part of my class anymore, that 8th grade class, the remaining students, they became the most well-behaved class out of all my classes. This is human behavior. So to break this down, it's impossible to be ruthless towards everybody. We just end up antagonizing everybody. And those that are under you will begin wishing for your demise. So, that's not a very good idea. Essentially, if you overreact to all these problems, you undermine your own authority. So what to do instead? So basically, you find one person who stands out and is doing something you don't like, and you reprimand them heavily. And the other people around, other people that are under you in that social circle, they are not hurt. Their lives are relatively untouched. But they witness this reprimand, and it makes them take second thoughts on whether their own behavior would warrant the same type of treatment. They begin reasoning with themselves. And more often than not, if the other members of the group are behaving in a similar way to this one individual that has been heavily reprimanded, well, they will change their behavior back to the norm. As in, they'll begin to fall back into the fold, which is, as we talked about in the beginning of the video, it's the human tendency, where we like to conform with everyone else as it smooths out interactions and encourages them to do what everyone is supposed to be doing. So another way to put this, say that it is important to define your enemies. Find your enemy and you destroy them. Essentially, you make them as an example for everyone else to not behave like how this person does. That's how one technique you can use to get what you want when you are the authority figure in that group. And Machiavelli, he said, it is better to be feared than loved, which there's a lot of reasoning behind that. When people fear you, they're going to do what you tell them to do. But if they love you, there tends to be less respect for you. Of course, life is not a zero-sum game. It doesn't have to be either this or that. So what I would say is, being feared is the priority. That's that's your backbone in forcing your will. But being loved, that is important complementary to the former. But feared first, then you are loved to back that up so that those under you don't wish for your downfall.